It is the Friday episode of the Dobbin Bands. We've done 3 shows this week. This one is the cherry on top. And what an episode it is. This is a young man who is certainly making a name for himself in the comic industry. His name is Ray MacKay. Uh, Ray, you won't believe this, is still a college student up in Canada, but he's already working on books for Big Bang, numerous other independent companies. He did something called The Night Watchman for Big Bang, and his newest project is called The Atomic Thunderbolt, which sounds really, really awesome. Ray also was a panel speaker at Comic-Con a few months back. So this is a guy who's really going places, and it's so interesting to hear his experience in the comic industry as a young person and, what his view is of comics as opposed to, our generation looking at comics as well. So I hope you really enjoy this. I sure know I did. Here is Ray MacKay. And I'm here with one of the best young writers in comics today. Talk about my friend Ray MacKay. Ray, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, Oren. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here on the show. I'm a regular listener, and I'm excited that my first ever comic podcast interview gets to be on the Dollar Bin Bandits.
Well, it's a pleasure for us too. So let's start at the very beginning, which for you, it wasn't all that long ago, but how did you first discover comics?
Um, it's funny because my first introduction to comics was superhero comics, and my first superhero comic was the first superhero comic, which sounds confusing, but when I was born, a friend of my dad's gave him her kids copies of the Superman Chronicles, these ones right here, which are the reprints of the original Siegel and Schuster Superman run. And I wasn't even old enough to read at the time, and my parents would read these comics to me, and eventually I started reading them. So I basically learned to read thanks to Superman. And because in these issues, like Superman appears on the covers with Batman, eventually I started to look into Batman, and my parents got me the Batman Chronicles. And anyone who's sort of read the original Batman stories will tell you it's very different than what you see on TV. He carries a gun in those first few issues, which was very interesting for me. But the original DC comic superheroes were my introduction to comics, and I can't think of a better way to get introduced.
Now, growing up in Canada, was there a lot of comic shops and comics available at the time?
Um, Sort of here and there. I was lucky enough that there was a comic shop, and it was actually called The Comic Shop, that was maybe a 25-minute walk from my house. And like my dad would take me there after baseball practice, and I would spend hours there just going through the comics. And unfortunately, it closed down, I want to say about 5 years ago. It was when I was still in high school, which was too bad. And another one, sort of up in North Vancouver, closed down about a year and a half ago. So there's only one really in my area now, Golden Age Collectibles.
Okay.
Um, it's a block away from my work, which is very convenient. But there's good access, and I would get a lot of comics for birthdays and Christmas. So yeah, there was a good access to comics.
Mm.
Not a lot of access to back issues, sort of what you find is what you get kind of thing. So
So,
I would, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, go ahead.
Just and credit to my dad here.
Mm.
Every year there would be sort of this one sort of, it'd be called like the comic, it would be called like the Vancouver Comic Convention. And it would just be a bunch of people showing up with their collections, selling them. So I would always go to this, and I would have a list of all the back issues I was looking for, like 1963 issue 7, The Nightman, anything by MLJ Comics. Do you have any Valiant? Do you have any of this? And I would just go to each of these people, give them my list, and I'd be lucky if I would find like 3 or 4, because I was always looking for these really obscure titles.
So did
So
you kind
yeah,
of gear yourself more towards the independent, the smaller titles, or were you kind of hooked on the big two?
um, I'd have to say it's a bit of a mix, because I was raised on Batman and Superman, and third in that order would have to be Captain America. My aunt got me the original Stan Lee and Jack Kirby Captain America comics from the 60s. Not like the original comics, but like some sequence. And those just blew my mind, because after reading these comics from the 40s, seeing what Jack Kirby and Stan Lee were doing, just like the way the action jumps off the page, it blew my mind. But I was also really drawn to like independent comics and
Mhm.
some of the more interesting and more almost creative, the different things that were being done there.
So, at what point do you say, you know what, I want to try my hand at writing comics?
Professionally, it was about 2 years ago, but I've sort of been drawing and writing my own comics since I was about 8 years old. I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned that. I used to draw my own comics a lot. Actually, in high school, we had this project. It was called the Capstone Project, and it was basically a year-round passion project you had to do. And in grades 11 and 12, I wrote and illustrated my own comics for that. And in grade 11, I wrote like a 5-page adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's Reanimator, which was just so fun for me. I tried to sort of do it in like a creep show style comic, and it was a lot of fun, and it borrowed heavily from the 80s movie, which I love.
Mhm.
Um, and in grade 12, I tried to sort of step it up a bit. So I wrote, illustrated, inked, and sort of lettered a 22-page sort of humor comic in the vein of like Archie and Big Nate. And I also took some inspiration from like Spawn and Blankets.
Mhm.
So like I've always been sort of drawing my own comics and like coming up with characters and stuff,
Mhm.
but I didn't really try and do it professionally until I was about 18.
Now, are you still going to start try with the art as well, or are you just going to focus mainly on writing at this point?
Um, I'd love to say I could do it sort of, I'd love to say I could do both, or I'd love to say I am gonna try drawing comics, but I've looked at my art and it's just not at that level.
Mhm.
And I sort of had a decision on whether or not, sorry, I'm a little nervous, but that just really means I'm excited for this. So sorry, I'm
No problem.
struggling here, but I'm just really excited to be on here.
No, that's awesome.
Um, I basically looked at my writing, looked at my art,
Mhm.
and I decided to go with writing. I decided I could try and sort of improve one, but not both, and I decided to go with writing.
Makes sense.
And I
Now,
still draw for fun. Like I still draw like my own characters and everything, and like sketch out storylines, but I do it more for myself.
I want to talk a little bit more about how you got into it and some of the projects you worked on. But for you as a writer, in your experience so far, what kind of communication have you had with the artist, and what kind of communication do you like to have with the artist? Do you like working directly together with them, or do you just sort of like sending in your scripts and they just do their own thing and you just kind of go from there?
Oh, well, that's a really interesting question, actually. And I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I know the relationship really changes from writer to writer and from writer and artist to different writer and artist kind of thing. I've had it multiple ways. I've had experiences where I've written a script and I haven't seen it until it was drawn, colored, lettered, everything. And
Mhm.
I've had experiences where I sort of wrote in a more Marvel style method, where like I wrote an outline and then the artist came back to me with the pages drawn out, and then I sort of helped workshop them and add in the dialogue. The process that I think was, or at least in my opinion, the best and the most collaborative is the one that I did with Gary Carlson of Big Bang Comics,
Mhm.
where I pitched him an outline. He sort of gave me some thoughts on it, and then I we wrote that into a longer sort of comic outline. Sort of, we didn't really break it down fully panel by panel, a bit more sort of page by page. And then we sent that to the artist, Ron Williams, and he would send us layouts. We would give him thoughts on the layouts, and then he would draw it. And then once he had it all drawn out, we would go through and dialogue it. And so it was it's very similar to the Marvel method, which I believe was popularized by Stan Lee. And I like that because it feels truly collaborative. And I remember what Mark Wade said when he was on your show, about how sort of once he hands off the script, it becomes the artist's, right? Because I don't ever want to say it's my way or the highway. Like comics is a collaborative process, and I really try to appreciate what the artists can do. Like this is the a page of the original art for the Night Watchman comic I did here. I could never do that, and I'm really impressed by Ron Williams, the artist who can. And I don't think I could have described that.
Mhm.
I don't think I have the skills. Uh, sorry, I'm not sure I have the skills to describe something as well as he could draw it.
Mhm.
So I really like sort of going back and forth because yes, I'm an artist, but yes, I was sort of a comic artist, but I was never to the skill that these guys are. So I really like to leave it up to their interpretation. I don't want to overwrite, you know?
Makes sense.
They're the artists. They know drawing comics better than me.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? I
No,
kind
definitely
of
that, that they, just that sort of collaboration, letting them sort of handle what the script is. It makes sense to me. So,
yeah, oh sorry, go ahead.
I don't know.
I have a collaboration going right now with an artist named Greg Paulson, where basically he just asked me to break down like just a small paragraph for every 3 pages,
Hmm.
and then he sends me the art, and I sort of write out the script, and that's been really interesting. And what he and I sort of talked about is he he gets the visual stuff. Like he can do that. He doesn't need me to sort of break it down panel by panel. He's been doing this for a while.
Hmm.
He knows what he's doing. Same thing with Ron Williams. Ron Williams doesn't need me to sort of tell him you need to do this, this, and this. He knows how to sort of draw an awesome fight scene. Yeah,
So, for how do you get your foot in the door to begin with into comics?
I'll be honest. I took a complete long shot and I reached out to one of my favorite comic companies, Big Bang Comics. I read a lot of their comics. I think I have pretty much the complete run. There's 1 or 2 issues that like nobody can get their hands on. I'm trying. Uh, I reached out to Big Bang Comics and I basically just said to them, "Hey, I have no experience, but I've loved your comics since I was a kid. I can still tell you what the first issue I read was. They meant so much to me. Is there any chance I could just like pitch a few ideas? Like I've been coming up with stories with your characters or characters based off them since I was a kid. Like I think I could do this." And credit really goes to Gary Carlson. He took a big chance on me and said, okay, no guarantees, but let's sort of see what you got. And we sort of talked a bit, and that conversation eventually turned into me writing A Duel with the Dead King, which was a Doctor Weird prose story that I wrote. And then Glenn Whitmore, who I believe was on your show,
Mhm.
amazing artist, he illustrated it. So it was an illustrated prose story that appeared in the back of Big Bang Adventures issue 20 right here.
Mhm.
Sorry, you're a Spotify or podcast listeners won't be able to see it, but
They can look it up.
it's it's a really fun issue, and it was really great. And that was sort of the first thing I did, and that sort of allowed me to get a bit of a foot in the door. I was able to reach out to other people and say, "Hey, I've done this for Big Bang Comics, which is pretty well known,"
Mhm.
and that allowed me to sort of get other opportunities. And I'm really grateful that I was able to do more stuff for Big Bang. It's been really fun and really great. And that first story really sort of opened the door not only to doing more work with Big Bang, but also it was a great thing to show people to say, I've done this, I'm capable of doing this. Please take a chance on me. And a lot of people have, which I'm really grateful for.
Do you see yourself evolving as a writer with each different book and each different story?
Oh, absolutely. Um, I look at a script I wrote even a year ago, and at least in my opinion, I think there's a night and day difference. And you could ask some of the people I've worked with, like you could ask Gary Carlson, like the first stories I pitched to him when I was 18, the stuff that I've like pitched to him more recently, it's a lot more developed. There's a lot more of a storyline behind it kind of thing. Or some of the stuff I've done for Grok Comics, the guy I work with there, Matthew Hasso, he tells me like the first script I sent him and the most recent script I handed in, night and day difference. Like the characters sound more different. Like I'd like to think I've improved, and I owe that a lot in part to people like Matt Hasso and Gary Carlson and Mike Hoffman from Erie Magazine, who have really pushed me to be a better writer and to improve my craft, and not just rely on stereotypes or sort of, oh, I saw this in a comic, I want to do that. Really push me to be original and to do better and to innovate.
Like I said, we'll talk some more about the different books you worked on, but I know you worked on a lot of different projects. Do you like new things each time, or would you be happy if, let's say, Image or DC or Marvel or another group said, listen, we want to give you a 2-year run on a book to see where you take this thing, over a period of time, a story arc. Is that something that you would like to do, or do you sort of like doing, a story here, a story there, and just moving around different characters?
I mean, I like bouncing around. I like sort of getting to do a story here, a story there.
Mhm.
It's fun, and I like sort of getting to try new things, like Erie Magazine, which is one of the comics I work for.
Mhm.
What's really fun is recently we've been doing sort of a theme a month. Like the most recent month is vampires. Before that, it was mermaids. Before that, it was Mothman. Before that, it was aliens. Oh, I have the order of that wrong. But it's been fun getting to tell a different story and a different sort of with a different theme each
Right.
issue. I'd love to be able to do like a really long run on something to really sort of like, excuse me, take some characters and just let them run, see where like the story would take them. It'd
Mhm.
be really interesting. I have a couple ideas and a few projects that might happen that could be something similar to that, but that'd be really cool. Like Valiant Comics, I'm sure you're familiar
Mhm.
with them. I would love to write Ninjak as sort of almost like a James Bond type character, or Quantum and Woody. It's just a buddy comedy superhero comic. Like that'd
Mhm.
be so fun if you did that for like a prolonged run. It could be like Two and a Half Men with superpowers.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
Big Bang, you've been doing a lot of work there. What's
Hmm.
what do you want to bring to the stories that makes you stand out from other writers that are there?
Oh man. Um, that's a great question. What do I bring that stands out? I'm not sure if this would stand out from the other writers because I know they all like deeply love Big Bang, but I love Big Bang comics so much. Like my mom has a photo of my 14th birthday cake. You know how Dairy Queen you can get images printed on the cakes? I have a picture of Night Watchman on
Wow.
one of the birthday cakes. Like I hunted down those back issues. For a long time, I only had one issue of Big Bang comics and I'd read it cover to cover like 20 times.
Mhm.
And like I would Google them, I would find out things about them. I love the characters and the stories, and I think they're just so much fun.
Mhm.
And I just want to do stories with them. Uh, I wish I could tell you I'm this revolutionary writer, but I just really love them, and I really love getting to do things with them. Like the most recent story I did for Big Bang Adventures issue 27, which features Night Watchman.
Mhm.
Me and Gary Carlson co-created a new enemy for Night Watchman, the Gray Gremlin. And it was an amazing experience for me because I got to add something to a character that I've loved since I was like 13 years old. Somebody could pick this up in 10 years and be like, "Oh my gosh, a new adventure of the Night Watchman, and this is his new villain, the Gray Gremlin."
Right.
Like I got to add something to a character I had only read about before that. It was amazing. I almost cried.
So let's focus on that for a second, because when you're creating a new character or when you're creating a character, where do you begin? Like, what's your blueprint? Is it an ability? Is it a look, a name, a personality type? Where do you build from there?
Oh man. Um Sometimes I'll start with a concept, like what if a guy could do this? Or sometimes I'll start with a name. Like a good example is, sorry, I keep pulling out visual aids. I'm really sorry for your Spotify listeners. Megaton, the story I did for Big Bang, Megaton Comics,
Mhm.
that's issue 24. The
Mhm.
villain for this is called Agent Orange.
Mhm.
And his deal is he was exposed to some dangerous chemicals during the Vietnam War, and they allow him to sort of shoot out like corrosive and like hazardous chemicals out of his body.
Mhm.
And I'll admit, I got the idea for that in the back of a history class. I was taking a history of the Vietnam War class.
Mhm.
I'm sitting in the class, in the back of class, and I'm kind of bored, not really paying attention. And then I hear Agent Orange and how it's like this corrosive chemical. And I sort of just, I was taking notes on my computer and I sort of scrolled down to the last page, created a new note, and I said, Agent Orange shoots poison chemicals from hands. And I was like, that'd be a cool supervillain.
And it worked out.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised that it sort of went from my history class to actual print. My history teacher thought that was really funny when I told him at the end of the semester. I still run into him and tell him about it. Great guy. Um, Sometimes it'll start from an idea of, oh, this would make a cool villain, and sometimes it'll start from what's the opposite of this hero.
Mhm.
Like I'm sure you've had many great sort of writers come in. I can't remember if this was on your interview of Dan DiDio or I actually got a chance to see him at, he came in for an interview for one of my classes,
Mhm.
but he said, what's so interesting about Batman's villains is they're all sort of mirrors of him in some way. Like Batman is order, the Joker is chaos, Batman is a detective, the Riddler creates mysteries, he creates puzzles. Like Batman's alter ego is an aristocrat, the Penguin is an aristocrat. So, for example, I'm sort of brainstorming something right now. Speedsters move from like point A to point B really fast. Well, what's something that's kind of the opposite of that or like runs parallel to that? Somebody that teleports. How would a speedster deal with a teleporter? Because teleportation is instant. Speed, super speed, as fast as it is still slower than that. And I don't know if anything will come of that, but I've been sort of mulling it over for a while, and I think it'd make a very interesting story.
And speaking of stories, one thing, we've spoken to each other before, but that I really love about your work is the way you pace a story so well. There's not a lot of downtime. It just keeps things moving. Where did you sort of learn and how did you sort of pick up on the pacing of getting a story out there?
Oh, well, I'd love to tell you it was I observed this from reading Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing and how he paced out the issues, but I'd really say it's probably just from the economics of comics. Making comics is expensive, so making comics is expensive. So if we don't have to have that moment, I try not to use it because it's cheaper, you know?
That
Like
makes
a while back, I had a script that could have been 26 pages and I kept it at 24 because I knew that would be a bit more economical.
Mhm.
And I didn't need to spread out the story that far.
Makes sense.
I'd love to get to spread out a story more. Like I had an opportunity where I had a bit of an extra page count and I sort of had all of my story done. So I got to have a few moments with the characters where they interact and you really get to know them, which was great. But it didn't necessarily add to the flow of the story. So it was great that I got to add it afterwards, but it wasn't wholly necessary at the time.
Because you're working with a few different comic companies and going to college too. How are you
Yeah,
finding it to sort of to juggle all these things?
hard,
Yeah.
honestly. So last year I was taking 5 classes a semester. I was on 2 intramural teams. I was living not in dorms, but sort of in my own place with a roommate, but still trying to cook for myself and everything. And I was doing comics. And at the end of my second semester, right before the summer, I hit the wall and got so sick I didn't leave my house for 5 days. I had a cough for the next 3 months. I completely burnt myself out. I was up till 2 in the morning most nights, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I've tried to learn from that experience. And this past year, I've dropped to 4 classes a semester, which has given me a chance to sort of work on my writing
Mhm.
parallel with my classes. And I'm at school for a writing degree. So the way I see it, it's okay for me to graduate maybe a year or a year and a half later
Mhm.
because I'm getting work in my field.
That makes sense. Do
Yeah.
do your friends realize that you're doing so well? Like, do people realize that Ray MacKay is becoming a name in the comics community and that, your stuff is out there?
Um, I'm not sure. A lot of my friends know about the stuff I'm doing. Like my roommate, God bless her, she listens to so much random comic babbling. Like, God bless her. She deserves a dedication in one of my books. And like some of my buddies, we all get together to watch Invincible, and I'll sort of tell them, "Oh, they're doing this Invincible. I'm kind of doing something similar in a comic I'm doing." And well, for example, Agent Orange, his secret identity is Thomas Kisher. That's like one of my best friends. I named the villain after him because I thought it was funny, and he really liked it. I I tell them what I'm doing, but of course, I am doing a lot, and I don't want to seem braggy at all. So if something big happens, I usually call one of my friends like, "Oh my gosh, this happened. Let's go." But um I think they know I'm out there and that I'm doing things. I'm not sure if they know to what degree. They do know I went to WonderCon though, so I think that was a big deal
Right.
because it is, which
Yeah.
was wild.
Now, you've done superhero comics, you've done horror comics. Um, are there any genres that you haven't done yet that you'd like to? And have you found yourself comfortable in one more than the other?
Um, I'd really like to do a slice of life comic,
Mhm.
which is sort of what I tried to do for my grade 12 project. It was sort of inspired by both comedy and this graphic memoir I read called Blankets.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's a great read. It's all done sort of with brush inking. It's beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, and it was also based on me and my friends. Like it was a very clear adaptation of me and my friends.
Mhm.
And look, we were kind of just funny kids trying to figure out high school, but I think some of the stuff we did is really funny and sort of I think some of those stories are worth telling. For example, I was in a screenwriting class last semester and I took a date. I got sort of dragged onto a double date. I got sort of talked into going onto. I turned that into sort of a comedic screenplay because it was just such a comedy of errors.
When you talk about things like that, and I've asked other folks, but when you're writing stories about your experience, how do you sort of edit what you want to put out there and what you want to keep for yourself?
That's been a struggle actually because well, last semester I was in a playwriting class
Mhm.
and I was trying to write a play about one of the more emotional moments of my life, sort of when a good friend of mine moved away.
Mhm.
And I tried to write it the way it happened. And my professor sort of just talked to me and said, "It's good, but you don't need to be accurate to real life here. Say what you wanted to say. Like, use the emotions you were feeling that you didn't say and write that." And I tried that, and it made it a much deeper story. Like, the bond that I had written in the story that was sort of more subtle became more, sorry, I'm blanking on what the word for the opposite of subtle is.
Uh,
Yeah.
Larger
It
than
became more overt, I guess.
okay.
And I think it turned out as a pretty beautiful story. But I mean, I got an A on the assignment, so kind of, hopefully.
Is comic book writing the long term, or is the comic book writing going to be a step for you to maybe do screenwriting or playwriting or other sorts of maybe prose? What's your path going to head to, do you think?
I mean, my first and my true love in writing is comics. Comics have always been there for me, and comics have always been a huge part of my life. If I could have a career and like live comfortably writing comics, I'd do it. I would 100% do it. But I realized that might not be feasible. So I'm prepared to sort of work a 9 to 5 and do comics on the side. Or if screenwriting is more lucrative, I'm taking some screenwriting classes. I would look into screenwriting. But I think I'd always want to be doing comics.
When
I,
you saw
I love them.
when you saw your name in a comic book for the first time, what must that have been like?
I think I was jumping up and down and screaming and hooting and hollering. Like it was like when my hockey team won provincials. I can't believe it. Like it was amazing. There's really no words to describe it. The first like full length sort of superhero comic I got published in was this one, Megaton.
Mhm.
I bought the cover art off the artist. It's hanging on my wall just because I had to have it. It was amazing though. It's still crazy to see story by Ray MacKay on a comic featuring Megaton, who's been around since 1980. Like 1980. That's like 30 years before sorry, not 30. It's a little under 20 years before I was even born. Like it's amazing.
I was going to say, and we've talked a little before we got on, but some of the artists you work with, the guys like Glenn Whitmore, who's a phenomenal colorist, but also a great penciler as well. I mean, you're getting in there with the pros and working with them as well.
Yes, I cannot believe that my first comics job was with Glenn Whitmore. Gary Carlson texted the name to me. Oh, Glenn Whitmore is illustrating this. And I said, oh, cool. And then I looked up Glenn Whitmore and I was like, oh, credit. Superman. Holy moly. Like I could not believe it.
He's
It
such a
was
nice guy.
mind blowing to me.
Hmm. And it's
I
also
still can't believe it.
a treat that people are reaching out to you to bring you onto projects as well.
Yes, I've been reaching out to some people, but I've also had one or two people sort of reach out to me. Like I've sent them my work and they say, we'll keep you in mind. And then they've come back to me and said, we'd like to give you a shot. And that's really meant a lot to me that like, for example, are you familiar with the comic El Gato Negro? I hope I'm pronouncing
Sounds
that right.
familiar. Yeah.
It's a sort of a Latin American superhero, and it was a it had a short run in the 90s and it's sort of being revived currently.
Mhm.
And I discovered the comic just through looking into independent comic superheroes.
Mhm.
And I reached out to them and they said, hey, don't send us your previous work. Send us some scripts with our characters and we'll see. And I sent them some of my work and they read it and they said, hey, not only are we going to do one of these scripts, we'd like you to help us develop one of our characters that we created in 2014, but he's only had a cameo until now. And that was just amazing. I couldn't believe that like this company that's sort of been around since the 1990s was willing to like let me work for them. It was amazing. And this is the character who the first story, the one that I submitted and that is getting drawn, his name is Lone Star. That's him right there. That's the artwork that's going to be featured in the series. I'm sorry, you probably can't see that super well, but it's really terrific artwork.
Mhm.
And I'm just so excited that the artist who did that is going to be illustrating a story I've done.
What advice would you give to folks right now who want to be in your position, that they want to get into the industry or that, they want to put their stuff out there? I know, nowadays there's so many Kickstarters, there's so many GoFundMe's of people putting out their own independent books. What advice would you have for folks doing all that?
Oh man. Coffee. Coffee is going to be very important in your career. Coffee is going to be very important in your career. Um, take rejection. Don't take rejection personally. Um, always be polite, always be courteous. Just manners will get you so far. And also, it might be the Canadian in me, but I believe in just treating everybody with the utmost respect
Mhm.
because it's a small industry and word gets around. Um, I would suggest read comics, and don't just read sort of in your box of like what comics you like. Sort of explore, expand. I'm a superhero comic guy, but I'm trying to start reading manga right now because I know they're doing things differently, and I'm trying to learn from that.
Right.
And don't give up. Um, I got rejected once or twice. Well, actually, I didn't even get a response before I found Big Bang. And even after I'd done that first story for Big Bang Comics, I got rejected quite a few times. I didn't get responses quite a few times. And it sucks, but you just have to sort of keep calm and carry on, for lack of a better expression.
If someone came to you today and said, any character you want in the comic universe, take a shot at it, who would you grab?
Oh man. Can I do like top three?
Go for it, man. How many you like?
Oh man. Captain Canuck has got to be number one. Just I would love to do that. That I found a reprint of the first issue of Captain Canuck, and that issue just meant so much to me when I got to read it because it was a Canadian superhero. And just I totally didn't know Alpha Flight existed until about 5 years ago. So for me, Captain Canuck was a huge deal when it came out. I kind of just missed Alpha Flight. I didn't watch X-Men the animated series to that point, so just kind of blanked on them. So definitely Captain Canuck.
Mhm.
I'd love to just write a story about him.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, I'd love to do like something for DC or Marvel, like Captain America. I'd have to say he's maybe my favorite superhero right now. I think I like the idea of pretty much a regular guy
Mhm.
standing up with gods and superhumans. And, well, I was rereading Infinity Gauntlet the other day,
Mhm.
and Thanos wipes out like a Herald of Galactus. He defeats the Hulk, he defeats the Vision, he turns Wolverine's spine into sponge.
Mhm.
Who's left standing at the end? Who tells Thanos, as long as one man stands against you, you'll never be able to claim victory? It's Captain America, just like a kid from Brooklyn with a shield. I like the idea of the ordinary man, minus the super soldier serum,
Right.
sort of doing the extraordinary.
And of
And
course, Ninjak.
yes, Ninjak would be so cool. I like the idea of sort of the Batman meets the James Bond meets the sort of ninja action. I think that would be a lot of fun to do. And I would treat it sort of like a James Bond, like a mission of the month kind of thing. Like he gets some gadgets, he gets sent off to exotic locales and everything.
Mhm.
That would be a lot of fun. Um, I'd love to do something with Big Bang Comics' character of Ultiman. I have a couple ideas I need to throw by Gary Carlson at some point. I think that character is highly underrated
Mhm.
and has a lot of potential, and there's a lot more to him than the homage to Superman that a lot of people think he is. I think there's some deep character stuff in there because the difference with Ultiman is he's an astronaut that got his powers when he was exposed to a meteorite, except the meteorite is losing power. So the every time he needs to get his powers, he has to expose himself to the meteorite for longer and longer.
Mhm.
And it is kind of killing him. So in order to be super, he has to like hurt himself a bit.
Mhm.
And like he at one point he like retires because he just doesn't want to do it anymore. And I think that there's so much that can be done there. You know?
It sounds like you got a whole plan in place for this character, man.
Oh, I have some ideas. I have a few ideas.
And
Gary, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Gary. We have an episode coming up with him, but
I'm so
such
excited for that.
a nice guy and does so much for comics. The books he puts out are such a nod to the golden age and the best days of comics, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You you won't find me arguing with that. I consider Gary both a good friend and he was like my first big comics mentor. He sort of taught me to write comics. Like I'll admit this Megaton issue,
Mhm.
this was the first sort of comic I wrote professionally.
Mhm.
We worked together on this. We worked together on this sort of writing it. And at the end, I said, okay, so should it be written by Gary Carlson and Ray MacKay or written by Ray MacKay and Gary Carlson? And he said, let's say written by Ray MacKay. I have my career. Let's get you out there. And that's just one of the kindest things somebody's done for me. Like I, I'm still so grateful that he just took a chance on me, which he didn't have to.
Right.
And he's done so much. Like he's written Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like he's the godfather of Image Comics.
Right.
Like I'm sure you've heard that nickname.
Yeah.
And he's a terrific writer. Like I've had a chance to look at one of his upcoming stories starring the Shutterbug and Amphibia Man.
Mhm.
Or actually, that's written by the artist Ron Williams, but Gary's sort of doing some editorial on it, and it's brilliant. And I'm drawing a blank on the name of the team right now, but it's they're set in the future. It's sorry, give me 1 second here because
Sure.
I get this right.
No problem. It's not next gen, is it?
Uh, no, no. I should know this. I'm really sorry. It's
That's why we got editing points.
yes. Thank you so much. Please edit out some of my ums and ahs, which are very common.
No.
Who? This is the Pantheon of Heroes. The Pantheon of Heroes.
Okay.
I want to say it was like the Coalition of Heroes, but I'm getting that mixed up with the Coalition of Planets from Invincible.
Yeah.
He's writing a Pantheon of Heroes story next for Big Bang Comics.
Okay.
I've got a chance to see like some of the behind the scenes. It's amazing. Like if you liked Legion of Superheroes at all, you will love this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are some projects you're working on? What can we expect from you in the next year or so?
Wow. Sorry, I'm just gonna consult my notes here for a second. I've been busy. I've been very busy the last little bit. I've got a couple interesting projects coming up.
Mhm.
Well, the next issue of Eerie Magazine will be coming out soon, and that's our vampire themed issue. I'm very excited for that one. That's going to be a lot of fun. I think I found a really unique take on vampire stories. It's going to be set during the Second World War.
Okay.
I'll have another sort of illustrated superhero prose story coming up from On a Riot Comics soon, sort of through their Tales of the Multiverse imprint. And all of those stuff I've done for On a Riot Comics, all the Steel Patriot, the Duke of Harlem, all of that available for free on a Riot's website. That's one of the best things about them. Everything I've done for them and everything they've done available to read for free. They just want to get great comics out there. I've got the first story I did for Grok Comics. It's technically available on Kickstarter right now, or it's available as an add-on to that Kickstarter. But by the time this airs, it'll probably be available on Grok's website, and that's the Atomic Thunderbolt issue 0, which was one of the more interesting projects I've taken on, actually, because it's part original comic, part reprint of the original public domain Atomic Thunderbolt comics. And I had to write sort of the framing device that sort of bookends the public domain reprints. That was a really interesting sort of project. It's something I hadn't done before. And look, I could ramble on about all the things I'm doing till the end of time. I've actually co-written a book that'll be coming out this August.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called The Swamp Witch of Satan's Forest. And it's the fifth book in the Wraith Dread Avenger of the Underworld series. And the Wraith is sort of like a nighttime vigilante character. And I got the opportunity to co-write a more horror-centric story where he's forced to enter Satan's Forest.
Nice.
And I submitted the manuscript for that in January. The other co-author and creator and publisher of the Wraith, Frank Derschel, wrote the first 4 chapters and gave me an outline on where to go. I submitted my manuscript in January, and it's been edited both professionally and by Frank. And I actually myself haven't had a chance yet to read the revised story. I know the endings change, but I'm excited to have been a part of this project and to see it in print. And like I've actually got a chance to work with one of the former artists of like Captain American Alpha Flight, Dario Carrasco. and we're
Mhm.
working on a new Canadian superhero called Bearcat.
Oh wow.
Uh, as previously mentioned, I'm working on some stuff. Oops. For Azteca Productions,
Mhm.
working on a new character called the Acolyte, the Demon Hunter, as well as a story featuring one of their main characters, Lone Star.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm very much keeping busy, but a lot of this stuff has actually was done a while ago by me, and it's just now sort of coming out.
Gotcha. What's the
Yeah.
best way for people to A, track what you're doing, and B, get in touch with you for projects and stuff like that?
Um, I have to say Facebook. Facebook is the best way to reach me for both sort of just to talk about comics, but also to reach out to me if you'd want me to work on your comic or something. I know it sounds like I'm very busy, but I am very much available and willing to work on sort of any kind of project.
Mhm.
I'm eager, hardworking. I think I'm pretty good, and I'm cheap. But Facebook, just as Ray MacKay, that's the best way to reach me.
Well, that's awesome. And I know you're going to have a huge, huge future in the industry. Uh, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And I know you and I are going to be talking down the line because you're going to have so much stuff coming out.
Thank Thank you, Oren. Really, thank you so much for having me on. And I'm sorry if I've rambled on, but if it's all right with you, I just one last sort of thing. I just
Sure.
really want to thank you for having me on. I've listened to a lot of the Dollar Bin Bandits, and I know I'm nowhere near as prestigious as some of your previous guests. Um, and I also just want to thank everyone who's listening and everyone who's given me a chance. Thank you. You've taken a risk with me, and I really appreciate all of you.
And we're back. Yeah, Ray is I'm very biased. He's a friend of mine. He's a wonderful, wonderful kid. I call him a kid. It's hard to believe I'm calling people kid, but yeah, I'm that old now. He's one of those guys that, you want your son to grow up to be like him. So caring, so respectful, so polite, and so talented as well. I've read his stuff, guys. This kid's got it. When it comes to writing, he definitely has the it factor that draws you in, that tells the story well. So please, please go check out his work. This is a name you're going to be hearing for many, many years to come, and we can't wait to talk to him for many, many years to come. So, Ray, thanks again. And as I've said before, guys, um, please, 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 please go to cbcawards.org. Vote for the Dobbin Bandits in the first two categories. The I think was it 1 to 999 subscribers categories. We have actually broken the 999. We're up to past 1,000 subs now. So thank you to you guys. Uh, we'll keep on growing, but if we could get these awards, boy, I tell you, it would be Christmas in November. November 2nd is when these awards are not named. So please, www.cbcawards.org. Vote Dobbin Bandits, and then go ahead and vote for so many other wonderful channels on YouTube. They all deserve so much, accolade. I don't even know the right word. I'm just so excited about being nominated. Go there, and we will see you next week.